Thanks everyone for coming to this webinar. This is kind of added because of my absence in the user group meeting. I decided to add a couple more things to what I was going to show, just to take the opportunity and make this even better. So sorry that I wasn't able to make that user group meeting, but I think you're going to get even more out of today's presentation. So I got a lot to go over. Hopefully you guys saw the agenda. I'm going to try my best to stick to that. So first thing I want to do is just recap for everyone what, I guess, the history of some of the problems that we ran into with drainage and kind of bring you up to speed in case maybe you missed some of those earlier problems or some of the reasonings why we're using what we set up today. So really it stems around annotation as being the main problem. Annotation only worked for drainage items if the item type itself was attached to that view specifically. So what that means is if you wanted to place a label that pulled an item type property that was on your drainage feature, if you were in your profile view, you had to have item type attached to that element directly on that profile view. If you were in 3D, it had to be another instance directly on that 3D. Same thing goes for profile runs. So this meant for one given feature, you could have 5, 6 different instances of the item type. So each of those instances would need to be updated individually, right? They had the same properties, but their values are not in sync. They're completely separate instances. So that kind of dawned the DU Sync app to give you kind of an easy button to make sure across all your views, all of the properties were the same. That was kind of how we addressed the problem. Now, the other things that come with that is the item type properties values, they're static. So when I originally looked at setting up these item type properties, I did originally try to make all those properties formulas that directly pulled the hydraulic properties. That way it would be dynamic. But during that testing, it really slowed the file down. So I switched it to be static rather than dynamic link. And then the sync app would just update the values for you. You might ask why not just use the drainage properties directly. There was several problems when you went to reference your drainage into another file, and when you tried to like get to those drainage properties, you couldn't. They weren't available to you. You know, Bentley did try over a couple releases to try to address that problem by like trying to get the drainage stuff to auto load. It never really resulted in a reliable or consistent solution that I felt comfortable saying, yeah, we can go this route. And I think Bentley also turned towards item types as a solution as well. So that's kind of a little bit of the history of why we're using item types, why we're not using those properties directly, a little bit of why they're not dynamic. So let's move forward into ORD 2024. They finally introduced what's referred to as single source of truth item types on drainage features. So they had previously implemented this on other feature types. They did introduce it to drainage features a couple updates ago, but there were just still problems with it. It wasn't quite implemented 100% in the way we could annotate. And there's a couple other problems. I won't go into details, but for that you may say, oh, they implemented this a while ago. Why are you just not getting to it? And that's because it took till this release to address some of those problems with the single source truth item types. So I'm happy to say now that we are going to move to ORD 2024, the problems have been addressed and we can now actually make use of these single source of truth item types. And so that's what a good part of this meeting is going to be about. So I did have to update the sync app to account for single source truth because we will no longer need to attach all these extra instances to all these other different views. We're going to go over moving files from ORD 1012 to 24, and I'll just be blunt and say that there is one particular thing that breaks, and there's really no way around it. And I'm going to go over that in detail and make sure everyone's aware exactly what's going to happen. But other than that, it's going to be a good thing. We let's let's first. What I wanted to do is, now that I kind of gave you that little bit of an overview and how we're going to move to single source of truth, I think everyone hopefully understands what item type is. I wasn't planning on going over that. Just extra properties on a feature, and hopefully now, if you didn't know, you know what single source of truth is. Basically, it's just one instance of those properties that you can see across all your views. Which has been a pain to deal with all these extra view instances. So I'll be happy to get away from that. So what I wanted to do first is just go over the update to the Sync app. And so you guys know kind of what it looks like, because the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be kind of referring back to it. So I wanted to get that out of the way first. Let me just play this video and start going through it. I'm going to have to skip through some parts to make sure this will be posted online. This video individually will be posted, but when you get into ORD and you want to open this app, this Sync app, first thing you'll notice is it's going to look drastically different. It's a huge update. Here's what it used to look like. It just had 5 buttons, and a lot of people didn't really know what it was doing and why they had to hit certain buttons. And I'll give them that. It was pretty much a black box. It was a quick fix to a solution to get something out the door. And you didn't really know what was going on. I tried to explain it several times, but unless you're me and you knew what you were intending to do, you probably don't remember what all those buttons do. All right, if you open up, even after I release this update, if you open up an older version of ORD, it will default back to that, right? So you're not going to get this view in 10.12. You're going to get the old view in 10.12. So the apps, even if you get the updated workspace, the app knows what it should show you based on what version you're running. There's a full log. You're going to be able to go and look at that log at the bottom for all the details you might imagine you want. So it's going to show you some initial loading stuff. So it's going to tell you, hey, I found these alignments in the file. I found these item types. These item types have the default data, the override data, the UDX data. All typical stuff you're going to probably not really care about. It's going to tell you how many links it found, how many nodes it found in the file, and then the last thing it'll say is if it found any item type instances that were not on features. So that'd be like you drew a line that's not like featureized or anything, and you had item type attached to it. So it's going to kind of give you a little warning, like, hey, you probably want to look at something because you shouldn't typically have those assigned to non-DU features. All right, so that's all that last little thing is indicating. All right, so what you'll notice here is there's going to be a list view of all of your conduits, your drainage network that you can see particular details about. And I did give you a couple of different view options here. So in the table view, there's a little drop down. Right now I'm showing you everything. So that's including conduits, gutters, nodes, but you can filter to show just like the conduit network. So it's not going to show you your gutters or like nodes that are not attached to any conduit, or you can do the opposite and show just the gutters. Now you may be wondering why I even included gutters. Right now we're not really doing anything with gutters. But when I was rewriting this, part of some of the properties we might want to try to grab in the future might make it easier if we just had the gutter knowledge there. So for right now, it's kind of there. You're not really using it. I also added this view just to help with like visualizing, so you can see kind of the flow of your network and what's connected to what. And you can click on that and look at the properties. So just another view option for you guys, which I'm pretty proud of. I thought it was pretty cool when I was writing it, but maybe you guys don't care. I want to go over quickly these top buttons, just general overview. There's a refresh all button. So that really does what you think it does. It just goes out to the file and refreshes all the data. So it's like essentially reopening the dialog. The update, and just so if you didn't see it over here on the side, there's also, you can refresh the individual features as well. So each individual one, there's a little refresh button there, right? Hitting all those individually would be the same as just hitting refresh all. Same thing goes for the update all. So update all, I'll briefly say what it's going to do because I'm going to go over more detail later, but basically it's going to go through and update all those property values, right? It's going to go get that drainage property and update the item type property. And I wanted to also mention that you can still get to all this data from the kind of connected link or the hierarchy view just by right clicking on something. You can see all the same data. So it's not like you won't see that data. It's in the right click menu. But the update all will go through and basically update all the properties. Um, and you'll see there's a column over here that says has updates to kind of let you know which features are out of date, kind of give you an indicator. The next two buttons are really for upgrading from 1012, right? Attach all missing single source truth DU item types, and the next one, detach all view specific DU item type instances, right? So when we move a file from 1012 to 2024, we want to get rid of all those extra view instances and just hope we never go back to that dark time in our history. And we want to make sure that we have the single source truth item type attached. And so I'm going to go over that in a little bit later on how, using that when I go over all the steps that you need to take to basically take a file and move it to the new version. But those are what those two buttons are there for. So I'm going to skip past that because we're going to go over a little bit later. Moving on to that next button at the top, the view item type lib info is you probably don't, or you probably might not find yourself even looking at that. That's going to give you all the back end information on how this app is working. So of course I clicked the wrong button or wrong area. So I should open up that and show you real quick in this video. I guess I showed the output. If you want to output the names of the alignments that it found, that's what that button does. I wanted to give you a way to see at least what it pulled in. You may ask why you need alignment data, and really the app needs to find those in order to do like station offsets calculations. So that's why it's there. Most of the time you're going to have it referenced in, it won't really be a problem. But if you're wondering if it found it or not, that's what that's doing. So now this, if you click this view item type library information button, it's going to open up another dialog here. And it's going to list all the item types specific to drainage and utilities. And then if you click on a given one, it will give you all it's doing. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. This is more backend data, but it's going to let you know, does this item type have default setup? Does it have calculated property setup? Does it have overwrite? So that's a new feature I'm going to go over a little bit. That's come up quite a bit. Does it have UDX properties? We do also have UDX properties. So if I click on one, I can see all the properties. I can see what type that property is. So it's a calculation type. It's the default. So what calculation type means is I'm going to go pull a value. So the first example is the property pull. And it's going to give you the actual property to pull from, what units it's going to convert it to, what rounding you want it to go to. There are several different calculation types with another one on the side. So this one's gonna, depending on the shape, it's gonna have a different format, like a diameter versus getting the rise run. So
Hey,
depending on
JD,
the different
your audio
shapes.
is bad.
Audio is bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sorry.
See here. I guess like
No. Do you want to try a different headset or something, maybe?
let me see if I just switch monitor instead of my head. Let's try that.
Now we can't hear you.
Hi. What about now? No. No.
That's
What about
better.
now?
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I switched over to my monitor audio. Hopefully that's better for you guys.
I mean, it's not great, but it's definitely not choppy at
Is
least.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. I can try it here. Okay. Is this any better?
Yeah,
Wait,
that's
is this better?
fantastic.
Wait, what about now?
Fantastic. Even better.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I guess my headset's due to be replaced. It made it through the COVID years at least. All right. Well, I apologize if that was hard to make out what I was saying. Again, this video will be posted separately as well as this recording will be, but um, I was just going over kind of the back end is just if you want to know how a property is being calculated, you can come here and look at it. For the default type, it's going to go get the default from the feature definition. So it's going to tell you, hey, for this feature definition, here's this default value. For this feature definition, here's this default value. All right. There are other types like read-only. Obviously, you can't do anything with read-only, and there is just a none, where it's just something that I can't pull the property from anywhere. So, like for example, that would be like the CFN value for our conduit, right? There's no way I can pull that from anywhere. There's no default value I can pull. There's no calculated property I can pull. So for those ones, you just have to manually fill out. But that's a little bit on the back end there. This column is kind of cut off. It's going to show you if there's a UDX equivalent, right? So we have UDX properties more so for flex tables. And sometimes we just need the same data that we have on our item type. And so all those UDX properties are doing is just taking the value from the item type and throwing it over to the UDX property. So that's what this column is a little cut off. But for the most part, you probably won't need to go in there, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. So moving into kind of the main section, I did add some quality of life features like being able to fit your view to a feature or add to selection set, right? So I should be showing this in the video. If I click like the fit view button, it should fit my view to that conduit. I'm zoomed in a little bit, so it does fit to the extent. And then, if you want to add to selection, it will add it to selection. So those, you can also get to that from the hierarchy view as well. It's going to tell you what type it is. Is it a link? Is it a node? If it is a link, there's a link type column for if it's a gutter or conduit. The name, so that's just the feature name. I'll give you the, did I pause this? There's no play anymore. There you go. It'll give you the feature name. It'll give you the item type name if you're curious on what the item type is. Some more just general information. For the most part, you probably won't need to look. Again, since we're not really using gutters, you're going to see like some blanks. It's just kind of there. Maybe down the line, we'll actually make more use of it. But the main column, I'd say, is does it have updates? That's your big indicator that, hey, there's pending changes that need to be applied. Same thing with UDX. Does it have UDX updates? This is a good indicator if it's missing the single source of truth. It'll be true false. Does it have does that feature definition have defaults defined on it? Should almost always say true for that. If it says false, that would explain why maybe a default property is failing to update because there's no way to get the default if the feature definition is missing it. Hopefully you never run into those situations. So more overview stuff. And then there is the number of view instances, which you always want to see 0, right? We don't want those view specific item type instances anymore. We want to move away from that. So this will kind of give you an indicator once you update a file, if there are those extra view instances and you want to get rid of those. So I'll go over that in the next video. And then if there's any feature definition issues, there's another column for that. So, I had a gutter one that's probably always going to have feature definition issue because there's no item types on the gutter features. So maybe I should just omit those or get rid of that. So maybe I'll do an update to the app so you don't see that. But let's get over to the actual values part. All right. So as you select one, the right hand section, which you can select from either view, right? I'm just showing you can select either way. When you select it, it will zoom. It will kind of update this area over here with the list of properties that go with that selection one, and it'll give you the current values. So right now I haven't ran this yet, so all the values are zeros, right? So for like node to node length, that item type property is currently a value of 0. It's giving you the type. So what is it accepting? Is it a number? Is it a true false? Is it a text? Is it an integer? Just kind of giving you that little background of what is this value supposed to be, what type it is. So this property is a calculation type. If it is a calculation type, it's going to tell you what that calculated value is right here and there. So that length of that pipe, again, this is made up data, is that 48. So that's telling me that my current value is 0 and the calc value should be 48.69. So is there an update? There is an update. So you can see if there's an update on the given feature, and then you can dive in deeper and see which actual properties need to be updated. Same goes for the UDX properties, like if it has one, and you can see the value here for UDX properties, which again, you can probably not even worry about the UDX properties. It's just you're gonna get that kind of behind the scenes as a default. So you see for a default type, it's going to give you what that default value is that's sitting on that feature definition, right? So kind of trying to show you this information more up front and gives at least hopefully make you see what the app is going to do if you hit update, and you'll actually know if you need to update or not, if you are out of date, because again, these values are static, right? So you do need, anytime you change your network, you do need to remember to come in and hit the update all button to make sure that all these properties are up to date. So I did skip over the overwrite column, and so this is something that has come up over the years with the current app, is the ability to overwrite like a default value or calc value. So I did add that in on specific properties that make sense to allow overwriting. Maybe something overwrite value. You can check on overwrite, and then it'll let you edit that value. Now, I think the biggest example of this is if you wanted to use like the head wall. So just have one generic head wall feature, right? And then replace that parametric cell with the actual head wall. Well, all the type data is on that generic head feature. So I can't really default what type of head wall it is, right? So that'd be an example where you probably might want to override that and copy again. But I could try to turn my that's a good idea. Let me turn my camera off and see if that helps. I am in the office today, so probably our internet here. Hope that got better, but nope. All right, nope. Now, let me try another. Try this one. Let me try another one. Let's see. Do the. All right, changing colors now. Is that any better? Okay, go with this for a while. Thanks. I guess that's the benefit of being in an office. At least everyone can hand me their headsets. Back to this. I was going over the overrides and the example of just being the head wall is a generic head wall, so the default like type isn't really defined. So good example of maybe needing to overwrite something. So that's hopefully pretty simple to understand. Is you just check on overwrite, and when you hit apply, everything it does is going to go to that log, right? So that was successfully updated, and it's going to go down to the detail of all the individual properties. If it updated that property, if the property was already a good value or updated value, it'll give you all the information what the old value was, new value is. So trying to just be as transparent as possible with this app and just giving you all information. So if something fails to update, then it'll say that it failed to update. Hopefully you don't run into that. But that's really the gist of the app. It's still the same idea as we're just going to go update the properties and help you manage the item types. Um,
Hopefully now it's easier to tell if you need to update it or not, because it'll just be a true false column. I think I'd go over a little bit of this. If I wanted to overwrite this, I can just check. You can see, if you don't have the right value, it goes red. It's not going to let you put in, text if it's a number and things like that. But just one thing to remember is if you don't hit apply, obviously none of those changes are going to be saved, right? So if you do override and type in a value, you have to make sure you hit apply to persist that into the item type, right? But there's going to tell you what what the value is now, what it overwrote. So that one is telling you, hey, you overrode this value, and here's the value compared to the calculate value. I'll just kind of quickly move past here. Again, you can get all information in the hierarchy view. Hopefully you guys like that. Hopefully it's easy to manage. The main part is just don't forget to come here and update when you make changes to your network. I'm gonna skip past this stuff. If you wanted to watch this video, it'll be online too if you want. And all my videos I recorded have audio too, so you won't get these switching headset. So that was updated app. So let's go over some other things here. Okay, so you kind of understand the app, you understand why we need the app, the item types, but what do you actually have to do? I get this question from time to time. Is there's maybe people not understanding what needs to be filled out and what doesn't. So I tried to make it as easy as possible, simple as possible. Basically, after you place your nodes and links, you want to first step is make sure you got your feature names right. And hopefully you did that while you were placing it. So one thing to note that I'll show in the video here in a second is if you want to change the name in 2024, the only spot to change it is from the drainage properties. You'll notice that the feature name in the element properties window, the properties window, is grayed out. So you can only change that from the drainage properties. I'll show that here in a second. So after that, you really want to make sure you have your baseline references set in all your nodes. Because again, if you don't tell the node what alignment to use to calculate station offset, you're not going to get station offset, right? It's not going to magically know which alignment it's supposed to figure out station offset from. So there's a property called baseline reference that you want to make sure you have assigned in all your nodes. The next thing you want to make sure you do is you fill out any of those properties that are not like a defaulted or calc property. There's not that many. There's like 3. So for nodes, there's existing action label. So right now it's blank, and you really only need to fill it out for more so for the existing items is what it was intended for. Like if you want to indicate something's going to be removed, adjusted to grade, reconstruct, something like that is really where that property comes into play. And then for the conduit side, for those types, the suffix property is really the equivalent to the existing action label. I apologize, this is my fault. On the non-consistent naming, the suffix is just because it goes at the end of all of our annotation. So if I could go back in time, I probably would have just named these both suffix just to be more generic. But after I released it, I didn't want to break anyone's stuff, so the name's going to stick around. So you guys can yell at me for that. But for the conduit side, there's suffix and CFN properties that you have to fill out as needed, right? So again, the suffix is really more intended to indicate something's gonna be removed or something like that. So again, not too much, right? Lay out your network, make sure they're named right, add your baseline references, fill out these 3 properties and only if they're required or needed. And then the last thing to do is make sure you run the sync app to make sure all of those calculated and default properties are up to date. So that's really the gist of it. You don't really need to do too more. And you obviously need to set up your sheets and do annotation, but in terms of making sure all the data is set up correctly, these are the steps. So I did have a quick video to go that because I think visuals are great to show that. Actually, let me pause this. I think a chat came in. Does this new version of the app work any faster than the old? Sometimes would take over an hour. button your jobs. Good. I did test out on several different data sets. Now, the initial load does do a little more work because it's actually grabbing all of those calculated values up front, right? So that way you can see if something needs to be updated or not. But when you go to apply, I now don't need to go and find everything anymore. Like the old app didn't search anything, it just opened. And then every time you hit a button, you had to go out and find everything each individual time. So I think it will be faster. But I guess once I release it, you guys can let me know. I don't have my camera anymore, so you can't see my smile as I say that, but looks very similar to the Sheet Manager app. Is there an import export to Excel function like that one, or can that be a feature in the future? Could really help keep things more accurate. So it does look similar, but do not have the Excel export import function. That's something that could possibly add in the future. The main difference here is that majority of the properties are all like calculated. So like there's not really much to change to where you would need to export. But I don't know if it's actually a needed functionality. I guess you can reach out and we maybe justify it more to me. But as you saw, there's like 3 properties. But maybe that's neat enough. So okay, moving though back to this video. I'm just going to go through those steps that I just showed. So let's save you guys a little bit on jumping forward. But the first thing I want to show is the naming, right? So in ORD 2024, what you'll notice is when you click on just the generic properties window and you go to the feature to get the feature name, you'll notice that it's grayed out. And so in the previous versions, this was not grayed out. And it basically kept in sync with the label over in the drainage properties, which I'm about to bring up. So you change one, it was supposed to change the other. It looks like they just made it so that you had to go to one location. I'm assuming maybe they had sync problems going on, but if you look here in the drainage properties, if I change the label, it changes the feature name. So that's how it kind of always worked, but well, the main difference is you can't change it from the regular dialog, the regular element properties dialog anymore. Just one thing to note, not a bad thing. And also, if you need to like bulk edit, you can probably open up a flex table. It might be a little bit easier to get that list view to if you need to like rename a bunch in order or something. There's always another option like that route to go. I do want to mention though, you don't want to try to edit from the item type dialog directly there because once you run the sync tool, it's going to overwrite that, and there's no like back connection to the feature, right? All those item type properties are just going to get filled out by pulling data. There's no pushback. So that's not something you want to change. So hopefully I think I've addressed that well enough. Next thing is the baseline reference. So I'm showing here that if you look at the properties, there's a property here called baseline reference, and right now it's set to none. So there's 3 little dots you can click on and go click on your alignment, and you just set that. You can click on multiple, so you can select all your nodes, and then click on that property and click on your alignment, and it will add that baseline reference for you there. So you can do that in bulk, but you want to make sure you have that set. If you don't, you'll see pretty clearly later on when you try to annotate or something. You're like, why is station offset not there? It's because they couldn't figure it out because they didn't know what alignment to use, right? So the next step would be filling out any of those properties that can't be pulled from anywhere. All right, so you could go directly to the feature and go directly to the item type on that feature and fill out those values. That's one way to do it. I think using the app might be easier way, but here you can go and type in a CFN directly on that feature. It'd be a similar thing as going into the app and selecting it in the app and typing in and hitting apply. All right, there's your suffix property. So I'm going to jump forward here. I can go over to the app and do the same thing. Now, one thing I wanted to call out, which I've showed other people this in the past, and it's around. Because if you look at the type for, let me jump forward here. The existing action label, if you look at the type, it says default, and you're probably wondering, well, why is it default? So I did that on purpose, and maybe I shouldn't do this, but in my eyes, if you wanted to bulk apply that label to all of a certain feature, you could just go to that feature and update that default value, and then you can hit apply, and it'll just go and update all of it. So the reasoning behind that is kind of that way. So you could go over to your feature definitions, and maybe you just copy one and use and rename it for like to be removed, and then you can get all your to be removed like nodes on the same feature definition. So if I go over to my Explorer and I go and maybe find that feature definition and just look at those properties on that feature definition, this is where all the defaults are set. You can change it if you want to. If you don't like the default for like EX dot for existing, you can come on that feature and change it. So I'm clicking on that feature definition and I'm looking at the item type that's attached there, and I can come to that property and I can say, you know what, this is the default value I want. Very easy to do, guys. And then I can just come back to this app and refresh so that it gets that new feature definition. And now if I go and click on that pipe and I look at the existing action, you'll notice that the default value is test now. So now I can just apply all, and everything that's on that feature definition now gets that default value. So that only works if the property type is set to default, right? If it's set to none, then it doesn't deploy. So that's a little, as I was showing this, I thought that'd be a good thing to show you. And just to let you guys know, this video will be on YouTube, and all of these individual videos will have timestamps on it, so you can jump to different things. I actually probably went a little too detailed, but I was really hoping to get you guys to the part of the video that you really want to get to, because some of these videos are kind of long. So if you are going to go back and you don't want to watch this long webinar and you go into a specific thing, go check out, I'll show the link to the YouTube playlist. But so after that, the really only thing you have to remember to do is make sure that you're hitting the update all button if something changes, and that's the last step, right? So I can see all these has updates. So I'm going to want to hit the update all and make sure they all get updated. As I was recording this video, I did notice that there is a flag or an update problem. It didn't trigger these updates. So if I hit refresh, all those trues would come false. I also thought it'd be good to show in this video that it did come up right here. It said, hey, some of the properties failed to update. See the details. And if I go and look, you're going to see that the gutter element is what failed because there's no feature attached. So while yes, there was a failure, it was on something we didn't care about. So I mentioned earlier, I might need to go back and update the app to just kind of skip over these now because they're not really being used. Thought it'd be good to see, but now looking back on it, maybe I should hide those errors because they're not really an error message because we don't care about the getter types right now. If you see that, don't be alarmed. That's why I put it in this video to make sure I showed you guys. Just go look at it if it says gutter. Or if you're not even doing your hydraulic side, you're not placing gutters, you probably won't even have them in there. You don't have to worry about it. But I know some consultants do their design in the software where they would have their gutter features laid out. So one thing to look out for, I probably should just go update and skip over those so you don't see red for don't care about. And then if we ever use gutters in the future, then I can turn it back on. All right, so that just went over the user-defined actions. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Hopefully it's clear. Now, probably the part everyone's been waiting for. What am I doing? Actually, ahead of schedule. Look, oh, yeah, I'm right on time. Look at that. That's crazy. So, I put together this slide just to go over the steps. Obviously, I'll have a video next that kind of go over the steps, and so here's why I said there's one thing that breaks, but we'll get to that. First thing you want to do is, I'd say, save a backup of your drainage file, right? If you're going to move it to 2024, I wouldn't move it without having a backup. case something just goes wrong. Right? You never know. But after you get that, you do want to make sure that you have our updated workspace with the updated item type library, dgenlib, and just updated app, because you will find very quickly that the current app will not work in 2024 because ORD does not like these multiple instances anymore. And you'll see in the video here that it just there's no way to move forward with that anymore, and probably for the best. So you want to make sure you have that update, which I have not pushed out the updated app or the item type library yet. I wanted to have this meeting first and explain everything to everyone before I just pushed it out. But when I do push it out, it will still be on the like 10.12 schema. So it won't update our workspace to 2024 yet, as it's really the app will work in both versions of it. So you won't have to be concerned about getting it too early. It will know not to open this new version of it. It'll open the old way, so you can keep going with your current projects if you keep them where they're at in the version. So I will be pushing that out probably within the next week or two. If you're on the mailing list, you'll get the email saying, hey, I pushed on an update. But that's my reasoning for not pushing it out yet. So after you get that update, you save it back up. Now you're ready to open this file in 2024. You get the update message. You're hit OK, yes, update the file. Now, the next thing you want to make sure you do is, since you started that file in 10.12, you want to make sure that you go in and sync the library to get that updated library, or the new version of that really is, it'll work, it'll just fail to do a lot of things because it needs those new libraries or updated library. So actually, I'm going to play the video and go over these steps, save us some time, right? Rather than say it in the slide and then also say it in the video. All right, so what I want to show here is I have a file in 10.12 open, and what I did is I tried to get all the different ways we annotate. So whether it's annotated based off of element annotation, model annotation, symbol labeler, place label, I tried to place different. That's why there's so many here, because I was placing them different ways so that when I updated it, I could see what happened depending on how you place them. So I think I captured all the different ways you can place these text fields. And I did it in plan view, I did it in cross section view, and I did it in profile view for nodes and conduits, because you'll notice that they behave a little differently. So now I'm closing, I'm reopening the file in 2024. I'm getting this message, yes, go ahead and update, and it will update the file. And so what I want you to notice is just purely updating the file does not break anything, does not change anything. I have it opened here, everything is the same as it was, right? I can click on a given node, and if I look at the properties, you're going to see I still have all of those extra item type instances. All right, so that you can see there's a whole bunch, right? All those different views are showing up because that's how we had to work before in 10.12, right? Just to get the annotation to work. You can see all of them are there still. So just upgrading doesn't change anything, right? It's the next step that you're going to start seeing things change, right? So what do we want to do? We want to get rid of all these view-specific instances that are a pain to deal with. We want to get to the single source of truth here. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and open our sync app. It's going to see that we're in 2024. Oh, wait, I almost forgot a step. Make sure you go in and sync your dgenlib item type, or your item type to the dgenlib, right? So the OHDOT.du is the library. I'm going to click on it, click libraries, update from library. And you're going to see it's going to bring in a whole bunch more. Don't be alarmed. Most of that is more back end. But you need all that back end data because that's what the app's reading. Calculated data. I tried to not hard code all that. Change in the future if we need it. That's why there's extra instances there. But you need those extra instances because the app's looking for them. Or not instant, just item types. Now after you update, now open up the app. And what you're going to see if I scroll over is it's going to tell you, hey, look at all these extra instances you got. So you didn't see that in the first video that there are individual detach buttons. So you could go in and individually detach each one, but there's really no reason to keep them. So the first thing we want to do is detach them all, right? So here's where I'm going to go over some of the problems that I ran into. So I'm going to hit detach all. It'll go through and get rid of all of the item types, all the view specific item types. And it's going to kind of leave that single source tree item type. And so what you'll notice is that in plain view, my annotation on conduit specifically went away, which I'm going to go over that more details in a second, but just calling it out since you guys are probably looking there. But if I click on the node, you see I have one item type, which is what we want, right? We don't want more than one. I click on my conduit, we have one item type, and all the properties are still there, right? This is what we want, right? We want to get down to one single source truth item type. So if you notice, the 12-inch type B annotation did not break. That annotation was placed off of element information. The element information, or element, annotate element, sorry. The annotate element button, will annotate those. Those didn't break. It was just the ones that were placed manually. And it was only in plan view and cross-section view. Profile view, nothing broke. All right. So that is what it is. It's just conduits, it's not nodes, and it's just manually placed ones in plan and cross-section view. Right now, most of your annotation, besides the callout, typically you're going to be placed with element annotation. But so I get that this is bad. I don't know why it broke, but I'm going to show another thing that happened too. So I'm going to reopen this file. And I did all that. I reopened it, and now I lost my node annotation. But you see the fields are still there. And I was like, well, what happened? I thought we were good. So I go and look at the properties, and the software, I think, just is getting confused on the single source truth. And it's like, hey, I need one. I'm going to add one, even though there's one there. So it added one, and if I click on that one, none of the properties are filled out. When it added that, all of my annotations switched to that instance rather than the instance that we had. All right. I don't know why. You do that one time, and then it's like cleans itself up, and then you're good to go. You can keep reopening and closing, reopening, and it doesn't happen again. It's just this first initial after you. Now the conduit, it didn't do that. It kept my single source truth. It's fine. It's there. It's got all the properties still. So kind of conduits and nodes just acted two different ways here, if you guys know. But the nodes are really easy. Now I'm just going to go back to my app. I'm going to all, you can close and reopen. It's going to say, hey, look at all these nodes have one extra instance. I'm just going to hit detach again. And what it's going to do is it's going to copy all of the property values from the good one over to the new one and get rid of the old one. So this one's really easy to fix, and it's just a one-time fix, right? So I'm showing you there's those two. I'm going to hit this detach all button, and then I'm going to look at my properties. Now, if I trigger something to update the fields, like clicking out of the model, clicking back in, you're going to see all my fields are updated, and now they're all back to normal, right? So if I go look at my node property, there's my single source truth and all the properties there. I didn't lose any of my properties because I copied all the ones from the one that was good. So all the data you had in there, you didn't lose. The item type data, you did not lose. Like, I want to be clear on that. Everything is still there. There's a little bit of a process, right? But in terms of nodes, that's all you got to do. Clear all, like purge all extra instances, reopen, purge all, and you're good on the nodes. The conduits, you lose your manually placed annotation and have to be replayed. I've tried and tried to figure out how to not have them break. I've tried to code around it, but as you can see, the fields just aren't even there anymore. Like, I can't even fix the field because it's gone. There's no highlight of the field. I don't know what happened. So I'm just trying to be straight with you guys. Here's what's going to happen as you move your files forward. Hopefully that doesn't anger you guys too much. I have tried my best to make this a smooth process. In the long run, this is the way we need to go. We need to go single source truth. It's gonna make everyone's lives easier. It's just this: if you decide to move a project forward to the new version, you have drainage in there, and you've already started placing annotation. There's something to look out for. If you didn't place your annotation, moving forward is pretty straightforward. You're going to open the files, sync your item types, delete all instances, close reopen, delete all instances, and then you're good to go. I tested this a lot, so if I don't think I've missed anything else, I tested in multiple files, tried to get all the different scenarios planed out here. So that's kind of the reality of where we're at with this move forward. I don't know why the annotation broke there, but that's unfortunate. We were so close to having this really smooth transition. But hopefully it's just the callouts, because that's typically what you're going to place manually. Hopefully it's just those. And hopefully you don't have too many in your cross sections. But that's where we're at. You just have to go and replace those, and then moving forward, hopefully we don't run anything else. I wish I could say this is all the problems that we're going to run into, but I'm not done with this meeting yet, right? So there's another thing that happened to later on that we'll go over. There is the process for updating. I'll post these slides so you have this. The video also, I go over this slide in the video, the individual video in our playlist as well. So there's that. What if you don't want to go to single source truth in 2024? What if I want to keep using the app the way it's been working? And I'm sorry to say that you can't do that. As you saw when you close and reopen, it added that extra instance to the nodes. Basically, once you start adding or removing item type individual view specific instances, and you close and reopen, you start getting like those extra instances popping up, and it's just ORDs, they don't want you to do that. It was a workaround to begin with, so it just doesn't play nice. So if you want to keep using the old way, then you can't move to 2024. But there's no other way around it. You're going to have to switch your single source truth if you switch your drainage to 2024. All right, so now I'm going to take the rest of the time here. We're going to just go over just drainage workflows, right? So the first thing is going to be how to annotate. I'm going to go over creating that table for your profile run sheets. But we went over this a little bit in the Cat user group meeting. I have full video is going to go over all the different ways you can annotate and kind of what the pros and cons are. But we did update LND if you guys didn't see that. So the goal here is to try to move that proposed storm sewer information to one sheet, or the profile run sheet, drainage detail sheets, if you will. Move that more to a table-based approach to hopefully minimize all the annotation that's going on in all the different views. We also update it to make sure like the reference balloons like are unique and are used across your project for drainage features. We want the designation for structures to be D- and for conduit to be P-. So I mentioned cross sections. Most of the proposed is going to be moved to that table-based data view, and then the storm sewer profiles we added some more requirements to what was in there for what columns are needed in that table. All right. So I don't want to go over this in too much detail, but if you look into the actual LMD, here's what it's actually saying: label proposed drainage structures with reference balloons in plan and profile. Label the conduit. All right. So structures, balloons, conduits, reference balloons, size and type. So that was something that came out of the Office of Hydraulics, that they still wanted the size and type indicated on there. So that's that, and then also the reference balloon to get any of the rest of the information about that. And then so the rest of that information that now are not showing in like profile, like all the connected pipe information, inverts that are used to showing in profile view, is all going to be over on your profile like details, your drainage detail sheets, and that's what this is saying: is the storm sewer profiles. Go look at that for like how to show the rest of that drainage information that you're no longer showing here. And then for the existing stuff, it's staying the same, right? So you know, that storm sewer profile is really geared towards like your proposed storm sewer network. So if you have like a drain existing feature like directly attached to like the proposed, you know, you would include that. But all the other stuff, you don't need to include in that. So for those ones, you're just going to keep annotating the full annotation. And I'll have a picture here in a second. So, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. We cover the cross sections. It's pretty much the same. So I'm going to skip out. You guys can read the L&D if you want. I want to get to just I threw some examples up here just to help kind of visualize what's needed. So like plan view, you're having like the flow direction, the size, type, and the reference mode, and for conduits in plan view, and then for nodes, it's really just the call out and nothing else. Now I do have an example of maybe more of the existing stuff, right? So to be removed there, you still have like call outs on more the existing side in plan view. Now in profile view is where you'll see more of the difference. You still have the size and type. Now this used to have more information, right? It had like length and slope, I think. So we remove that. And you still have the call out. On the nodes, here's where the biggest change is, right? You used to have all the connected information shown on your node, right? You won't need that anymore. You just need the call out, and all that information is going to be put on that table view in your profile run sheets. But as I mentioned, the existing stuff, you're still going to show all that data there, right? Just this, has a good chance of not showing up on that table because that table on your profile run sheet is geared towards the proposed storm network. So for that reason, you're still going to want to give all that data in the plan, just like just do. All right, so let's go over annotation. So this will be the last really long video I have, but might give you guys the most, I guess, information if you're curious on different ways. So we'll start with plan view. We'll go profile, then we'll go cross section. So for our plan view, your conduits, you can do most of the annotation just using element annotation, just as you probably have always done. Right. So you can select all your conduits. You can use that element annotation button, and that feature definition is set up to say, here's how you should annotate this. Right. And it's going to place that flow area, it's going to place the size, and it's going to place the type. What it doesn't place is it doesn't place that call out. So we still need to annotate that. And I do want to mention you can play with the offsets here in the annotation group. So like how far you want this error to offset or this text to offset. So I do have a video that goes over that. I did not. I've gone over it before. So that's one thing that I decided to not include in today's video. But there is a way to go in and just change that offset. So that's a really good video if you're looking to kind of play with that, tweak it a little bit. So let's go up and we're going to show a bug with Civil Labeler, unfortunately. So in Civil Labeler, in plan view, it doesn't quite work. So I have a defect file Bentley. I'm going to show you what happens here. So if I just go and click on like one of these drainage labels that I've set up, so like the proposed call out, or I don't know which one I'm picking in this video. I guess I'm showing if you didn't want to use element annotation, you could use Civil Labeler if it worked. You could use that to place the size and the type, but Civil Labeler can't place this arrow. It can be easiest to use the element annotation, but it can place the text if you want to place that through a different means rather than element annotation. So I should be showing here. I'm going to jump forward. So if I want to place this call out, click on this call out label. come here and I'm going to place, and I'm going to go make sure I get my conduit snapped to so that it knows how to fill out the text field. But what you'll notice is it doesn't fill it out. So if I go and I place this, it keeps it as no, it's on. All right. All right. I don't know what's going on with all this. But just not gonna work. All right. Back to my monitor audio. All right, guys. Um, so we were talking, I think, I don't know when I cut off, but basically there is a bug with Civil Labeler in plain view. And it's pulling, it's trying to use this single source truth item type. So I think it's specific to drainage features. But if you have labels set up that are going to pull a single source truth item type property value from a drainage feature, it doesn't work. So I'm in my drawing model. I should preface that. So I'm in my drawing model and it doesn't work there, right? So as you see, I placed it. Let me jump back a little bit. But when I place it, it's not associated. So you could open up the text editor and you could right click on that text field, reassign field, and click on your conduit. And that is how it's supposed to work right out the start. You're not supposed to have to do that. So hopefully Bentley will fix this in the next release and we won't have this problem anymore. But something happened. So kind of just goes with the MO of every drainage update, always slightly missing the mark. There's always, they fix so many things and then there's just like one thing that just throws a huge wrench in everything. So this is it for this version, I guess. So hopefully they get it fixed fast because that's kind of annoying that's doing this. I don't know if you heard me say, but this is only for plain view. I can go to my profile view, I can go to my cross-section view, and Civil Labeler works just fine placing these annotation. But for some reason, it just doesn't want to work. So I am going to show here quick when it does work. When you place your call, you probably don't want to place it with a leader line. You probably want to fix it up a little bit. So I'm just showing you can change the setting. You can change the border frame to be more capsule. You can change your rotation. You can get rid of that leader line. And so that's what I'm showing here. So I should be changing that. I do find sometimes the rotation doesn't rotate the way I expected it to. Sometimes I have to come down and toggle off that little button in the corner about the last one. So you can see I'm just struggling here to get it to go right. It seems like it should be simpler than that. But I don't know if you guys use this tool, you notice that it seems to mess up a little bit on that. You got to play with the settings a little bit. But that's kind of if you want to use Civil Label. Hopefully, I'm showing this so that when they fix this bug, you won't have to do this last step, and you can use it to do your annotation. All right, so there's an example of what you might want to change with that label, depending on your situation and where you want to place it. So that was for conduits, right? So that's the general idea of what you need to annotate. I'm going to move on to nodes. I'm going to show some other ways that you can annotate, which you can do the same for conduits. So you don't really need to show it twice. But for nodes, unlike conduits, we do not have element annotation set up. So you can try to use element annotation on a node. It's not going to do anything. There's nothing on that feature that says, hey, use this annotation group. So, which we did that for various reasons. Mainly the lack of functionality about being able to move and have the leader line move with you when you go through element annotation versus civil label. Civil label are definitely is really good on me being able to move a feature or an annotation and have the leader line move with it and stuff. So you'll notice the same bug here with civil label, right? I place it and it just doesn't associate. I could go in and I could associate it if I needed to, or if I wanted to rather. So apparently I'm still doing the pipe in this video. I thought I moved on to my notes, but I guess I'm still in pipes. All right. The other thing I want to call out is you can annotate in bulk. So you see here, I am selecting both like two nodes and I can place it in bulk and I can kind of choose my offset, which is really cool if Civil Labeler would actually place it correctly. So we're almost there, guys. Once they fix that, we're going to be in a pretty good spot. So I just wanted to show this now, just so you're aware, because I'm thinking they're going to fix this bug quickly, hopefully. And that way you don't need to wait for me to show you this later on. But funny is that the place note tool, right? So that's just for placing our notes, wasn't really intended for like placing labels and text fields. Actually works. So we can come into our place note tool and we can go choose that text favorite, which is what Civil Labeler is using behind the scenes is a text favorite. I can scroll down to drainage labels here. And so you'll see that there's like plan, storm sanitary node call out, storm sanitary pipe. No, so they kind of pretty much match up with what is in Civil Labeler. But I can come here and I can choose, say, the call out one. It's going to throw in that text field. So if you remember when I placed that conduit, what it showed, it pretty much showed that text, right? So now if I go to place this node, actually I'm going to open up Civil Labeler and kind of show you, you can see what's dimension style that the Civil Labeler is using. So you can kind of get an idea of what you should set in place node if you want to get a similar experience. Now in that dimension style, you can come to this notes section. That's how you can control things when you use the place note tool. So you can come here, you can change the text frame, the terminator, the leader. You can change that in your dimension style. And then when you go and place note using that dimension style, you can help control some of that display. So hopefully you guys knew that. That's more like migration functionality. The main thing here is when I place it, it actually does the association. So basically what Civil Labeler is supposed to do, place note is doing. All right. So there's one workaround for the bug until they fix it. Another workaround I wanted to show here, and this is really only specific to the call out, because the call out is just the feature name. So all of the drainage labels, all those text fields are all pulling from the item type properties. I felt like that was easy to explain. If you're wondering where the annotation is pulling the value from, it's easy to say all the drainage annotation is using the item type properties. But we do have a label to just place the feature name, right? And so that is what this call out is. It is just the feature name. So you could come down and use that label to place your call out using Civil Labeler, and it would be the same as using the drainage label, just it would actually work, right? So one's placing the item type property that is the same as the feature name property, while the other one's just pulling that feature name directly. So those are kind of two workarounds to help you guys out with this bug with Civil Labeler. Hopefully that made sense the way I described it. If not, you guys feel free to reach out to me. You can try to do a better job. But all right, so moving on. from that, the existing annotation in plan view is pretty much the same, right? We have the same bug going on. You need your call out. You use a different label for the conduit, right? It adds that suffix, I believe, to say if it's going to be to be removed and whatnot. So you can still use element annotation just like you could for the proposed stuff. I'll skip forward here. Just going to show the same bug in Civil Labeler is placing those callouts. But that's really the gist of your plan view annotation with a couple different options for you. So let me jump over to profile view. So in your profile view, your conduits most likely auto annotated during the sheet creation process. That is again using element annotation, just like we did in plan view, right? So you can see maybe this offset is a little more than I want. So again, I have the other video that will go over that changing that offset from the pipe if you wanted to control how far it offsets. But you can still use element annotation to annotate that. That's what I'm showing here. Very similar to plan view. You don't need the flow arrow though. So comes to the crossing pipes, or these pipes that are coming out, that what gets auto annotated, since it's a conduit and saw it placed it there. Maybe you switch that to have a leader line, switch to a labeler. So I'm deleting those out. You could have used remove element annotation as another way to remove that. So let's go into Civil Labeler, and you'll see there's a whole profile tab in Civil Labeler and separate out by conduit and node. So if you didn't want to use element annotation, you can use the detailed ones of like proposed dash detail or the existing dash detail to annotate that. That's another way you can annotate it besides element annotation. So there's me showing you, hey, you can place it. Maybe you get to control the offset, a little more individually that way, if you'd rather do that. So again, we still need to place the call out. So same thing, I'm just going to show that this time it works, right? Why it doesn't work in plan view, I don't know, but it works just fine in profile view, right? But again, that probably doesn't look that great. So you might want to change some of these settings to get it to kind of look better when you place it, right? So there's an example of how you might want to change those settings, right? So moving over to the node annotation, just like plain view, there is no like element annotation set up for nodes in plain view either. So you're gonna use the sublabeler, and same reasons in plain view of why we didn't set it up. There's me placing that for the crossing feature, and then it should be moving on to the node annotation next. So now the node annotation for the proposed versus existing here's where you're going to see a lot more differences, right? So we see there's like pipe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So that's depending on the number of connected pipes. But for proposed, you could just use the call out label and just go ahead and place that label. Now there is a very annoying thing that happens when you go to place your annotation. You'll notice that the leader line keeps snapping to the bottom. If you move to near point snap and place it, there's a little trick so that it doesn't jump down to the bottom on you every time and you get really annoyed and frustrated. I don't like that it does that jumping down to the bottom. I've submitted that to Bentley, but I don't know if they're going to fix it or not. But there's a quick trick to hopefully make that a little bit easier. All right. So I believe I'm showing you can bulk annotate here as well, showing you that you can bulk annotate with some labeler by just selecting multiple things, just like I showed in plain view. So granted, obviously this doesn't look that great, but I'm just showing you the functionality here. Now, when it comes to the existing node annotation, you do need to know the number of pipes that are connected so you can choose the right label to place, right? So like I have them there for proposed as well, but you really you don't need them anymore now that we moved all that data to the table, but I just left them in there. So if you pretend that this is the existing one, you can see what it might look like, right? So there's all the data that we're used to seeing. We've always shown on all of our nodes, and now we're kind of shortening that down, trying not to have all the annotation in all these different views and moving it to one spot. There's an example, like of what it would look like. You just have to know the number of pipes that are connected. That's the only caveat to this. And then as long as you're in the sync app, everything should be filled out, and that annotation should be pretty straightforward to place. All right. So that's really the profile annotation. I guess I quickly show existing. It's the same as proposed, just using different labels, right? I just kind of went over it. So you jump forward. You can still use element annotation. There's your node annotation. I'm going to forward here. So now let's move on to cross-section annotation, which is really, it should be pretty much the same as your profile annotation for the most part. So if you have like a conduit here, like I'm showing, you want to label that call out there for it. And so you can use Civil Labeler. It actually works in this view as well. Let me jump forward. Oh, actually, I forgot. You can also use model annotation. So in planning profile view, you could use element annotation for your conduits, right? But in cross-section view, there's not really that functionality. There's no like element annotation in cross-section. It's all handled through the model annotation. And so we have an annotation group set up specifically for drainage and sanitary. So what it'll do is basically go through your cross sections and find those conduits and then place that label or the annotation. So here you see me, I clicked model annotation, and I'm going to go and make sure I got the right group selected. And then I'm just going to apply it to this specific name boundary or drawing model. And so there it'll place the size and the type of that pipe. Right? So very similar to the way what annotated with element annotation and plane profile. It's just now through model annotation and cross section. You can also use Civil Labeler to place that just like you could in other views, right? So I can come to my cross sections and I can pick those detailed labels if I wanted to place it like that. I still need to place my call out, so there's those labels are there as well. So you can see maybe if you wanted a leader line of those callouts, it might be better to use Civil Labeler than the model annotation. So if I use Civil Labeler and I place that, I have a little leader line there. So there's another way to place that. I move to another view. Now this is like kind of slicing through a pipe. That's why it looks weird here, but I really wanted to kind of go over the node annotation. So if you have a node showing up in your cross section, then you should call it. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have a cross section at every node. That's why we have the profile run sheets. So don't take that away. But if it does show up, then you need to annotate like what the call out is. So you can use Civil Labeler as well for this. Now, if this was an existing item, you need to have all those specific connecting pipe information. One thing you'll notice, I did not repeat all of those labels in the cross section view. You can just use the profile tab. So if I'm about to go there. I'm a little ahead of myself on this video. So if I want to place like existing and I want all that connected pipe information, you'll notice in the cross section view of Civil Labeler, that folder, I don't have all those individual pipe ones. So just all you gotta do is go to the profile one. They're all there. They all will still work. You pick the right number of connected pipes and you can annotate. In this case, I think there's just one pipe or maybe there's two, I forget. So I'm gonna click on that, hit place, and you're gonna see that it's still gonna annotate fully all that information, right? So that's that's cross-section annotation. I guess that's all annotation I went over. Hopefully it's like too long. I'm like somehow ending exactly on schedule. This never happens to me. Hopefully you guys have a better idea of all the ways you can annotate now. That video will be posted individually, and it has its own audio already there and all the time stamps ready to go, so you can jump to different views. So that I think is already out there on the YouTube playlist, so you can go there and review that as well. Let's see, are there any questions before I move on? I know the flow error is a cell, but is there any way to make it not as long without editing the library? Can we make it a little shorter, maybe half the length? Yeah, that's something we can do. It is a cell. You are right. We can probably update that cell and make it a little shorter. Do you recommend not annotating all models with the drainage annotation group? Does it mess up models that don't have drainage utilities? Um, it won't mess it up. It's just gonna, if it finds that feature, because that group is just defining for all these features, place this annotation, right? So if you look at that annotation group, there's a couple different annotation definitions set up. But if it doesn't find that feature, then it won't annotate anything. So I don't think there's a problem with. I just, in my videos, I just choose one because I'm not going to go and show you all the different models. But I don't know why that would cause any problems. I'm not aware of any problems with doing that. Yeah, that's. I guess I don't really have a recommend. It's up to you if you want to do that or if you'd rather see it happen on every individual one. So the other thing I want to go over is just general workflows for drainage, setting up your sheets. And there was a workflow change, which again, I have already relayed to Bentley my dislike for what they did. But basically, you're going to lay out your network, you're going to run your sync tool, you're going to create profile runs, you're going to project those runs to centerline if you need them to show up on like your roadway centerline plan profile sheets. And here's where something changed in what I've showed you guys in the past. And I'll have a video to show that. And then after all that, you're going to place name boundary, create your sheets as normal, and then annotate. So the project profile run has changed. And by that, we can no longer do it all in the drainage file. And I'm not too happy about it, but let's go over it. So I'm in my drainage file, right? Hopefully everyone knows, creating profile runs. And so you can see, multiple multiple parts of your network in one profile view, like I have up right here, right? If you want to show that on your center line after you create your profile run, you need to project that onto your center line, and that way, when you're in your profile, your center line, you can see that projection. Okay? And so, in the past, what we've done is just in our drainage file, done that projection onto that alignment file that's referenced in. The problem is that we can no longer project to a referenced alignment, which has several downfalls, right? So one, now we can't keep our drainage work into one file. We have to edit the alignment file, which maybe another consultant's working on an alignment file. Maybe you don't have access to that alignment file, but now you need to in order to do this projection, right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to click on this project run, and I'm going to show you that it will no longer work in my drainage file, right? It's going to be grayed out and say I can't do it. All right, so here I'm going to project run. So I'm selecting my profile run that I created, and I'm on the projected over there, and I used to be able to do this, and now it's saying I can't do it. I can't do it because it's referenced in. And so I have this submitted case with Bentley, I asked them why they did this. They said there was critical problems with it. So I think it was causing problems, and so they just turned it off. And I said I need to turn back on. I need the critical problems fixed. This was a great workflow to keep my drainage stuff together. I gave them a long list of reasonings. I kind of said half of them right now, but I won't rehash them all now. So hopefully they listen to me and bring it back because I thought it worked really great. It was really great workflow. That way, if you wanted to see it in your profile view, your drainage work, you would just hit attach all profile views. So you didn't automatically get drainage on every single time you looked at that profile. All right. So we don't get that control anymore. Now it's going to show up on our centerline profile every single time. We have to turn it off every single time on all of our sheets. But that's what we have to deal with. So in order to do the projection, we have to go to our alignment file. Now there's no way around it. So I switch over to my alignment file here, and now I'm going to do the project run. And I'm going to turn off level here just to make it easier to select my profile run. I'll turn on my 3D view for a second. Just sometimes it's really hard to select that profile run when all these other levels are right where it's at. So I'm going to come here. I'm just going to use feature definition profile run 1. There are, I think, 5 to choose from. You can give it a name, maybe like the start end of that run. I used the same feature definition that you did for the actual profile run. Right. So I projected it onto my mainline center line here, and you can see there it is. Right. So it's now on that profile view. Anytime I open up this centerline profile view, I'm always going to see it, even if I don't want to see it. That's just, I guess, what we're stuck with right now, and until if and when they decide to bring back our functionality. So that is a workflow change in 2024. I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of. But that's what we're done with. So now I think I just came back to my I guess I'm going to add some crossing features here. So if you wanted to show crossing features, just a 3D cut should suffice. I'm not sure why I'm showing this in the video, to be honest with you. It was all about the project run. But I guess that's after you project it, you probably want to add those crossing features. So I was probably just giving you a tidbit of knowledge while I was there. But the main part of that video was the change in project profile. All right. So that's really when you're dealing with showing your network on your centerline of your plan profile sheet. Okay. So now let's move on to the last topic. I'm actually 3 minutes behind. I was doing good there. So profile run sheets, you've seen these before. I've shown you them before. The main thing here is this table, adding all the extra information that we used to annotate in the views. It's actually really easy to place the tables, but I did record a quick video here. I have a full video already posted from like 2 years ago, or a year ago, when we first introduced this table-based approach. That goes over a little bit more detail, but I wanted to just recap for you guys the process of how you might generate these profile run sheets. So I've made up test data. So the first thing you want to do is get a plan view set up for that profile run sheet. So I have my plan view open. I'm going to choose my scale. So I have a relatively small area that I'm working with. So I'm going to do 1 to 20, but this could be a 1 to 100 scale, right? It's going to be more project specific decision here about how large your network is. It very well could be 1 to 50, 1 to 100. Again, this is so short that it just doesn't make sense to do something at that scale. So I'm going to drop down to 1 to 20. And I'm going to start playing with the offset. Don't be afraid to change this offset. I don't need this long of a length on this project, so I'm going to bump it down. Right, I'm going to bump it down to like 300 feet. Since I picked a plan only drawing sheet, it's going to take the whole extent of my sheet, which I don't want because I want to throw profiles on that sheet as well. So I'm going to change my left and right offset down bit to give me more room on that sheet. So you'll see I'm just playing with the values here a little bit, making sure I at least cover my network. So maybe that's what I end up with, right? I'm going to create the drawing. So I'm going to check on create drawing. Let me go ahead and place this. And you probably want to name things better. In my full video, I named them better, but that's not the intent of this video. It's just really more of an overview. Make sure that you have your scale set right. Change that to 1 to 20. And I'm going to just output that sheet, and there I have my plan view part of this profile run sheet. All right. You can cover your reference dialog, you can move it. I have to move it, but maybe I move it there for now. All right, and now I have area for my profiles. So I'm going to jump back and set those up, right? So I have a profile run for this part, but since this one is just one conduit, there's really no need to create a profile run. You can just open the profile of that conduit directly. Just there's no reason to create a profile run there. So I did not, but I have one for this main run. Right, so I'm going to open that profile view up. I've already set it up to kind of have that proposed roadway or ground shown. So, I'm not going to go over that in this video. I have other videos that I've shown you guys that before too, but obviously you would set this view up to have what you need to show. And then you're going to come and place a name boundary. So I'm going to go to my profiles. I'm going to go and choose the profile only one. I'm going to match my scale, my plan view here. So I'm doing 20. And I'm going to go by station limits, and I'm going to start placing this name boundary. So again, don't be afraid to modify these settings to fit your needs. Right? I typically want to hit my start location a little bit negative, just so I have a little bit of buffer zone around that. So it's up to you how much you want to add, but you typically want to have a little bit over because it'll start you right at like the edge of the node, which sometimes isn't that great. So make sure you set kind of start and stop locations. And now the vertical exaggeration could be up to you guys, right? You don't have to exaggerate these. I have such a small run with very little elevation change. So in this example, I am going to exaggerate to match my like 20 scale of 4, right? So depending on your scale, you're probably going to have a different exaggeration, if any, right? I'm not saying you have to have that exaggeration for these profiles. So in this case, I will exaggerate it just because I really don't have much dealing with here. Now I also want to modify my vertical extents, right? Because again, what seed I chose was the profile only, so that was going to take the whole height of my sheet, which clearly I don't want, especially if I'm going to annotate this and get a grid. The grid is going to be based off of this size, so you do want to make sure you turn that down. Make sure you have enough room to do your annotation. But you can lower that down a little bit. So I played with these a little bit. That looks like a good size. I'm going to place that, and I will check on to create drawing during the creation. So I will create it. So here's where you want to pay attention. Make sure you have your scales matched up right. But under the sheet model section where it says sheet, you don't want it to go to a new sheet. You don't want to create a new sheet model. You want to go put it on the sheet that you just made for the plan view. That way they're together, right? That's the goal here, is to get that on one sheet. So I'm doing that, and now you see it go straight to that sheet that was already created. I can go in the reference dialog and I can move it around. So that's the general workflow. I did forget in this video to select the annotation group during the sheet cut process. So if you forget that it happens, you just go and annotate your drawing model, right? So I'm going to go to my drawing annotation. I'm going to go choose that profile annotation that matches what I need. So I did a exaggeration of 4. I'm going to choose that one. That way my squares look nice and square and not like rectangles. That's the main difference there with those annotation groups. So if you forgot, it's very easy to go back and add. maybe you remove the elevations at the top here. So that's just element annotation. So if you remove element annotation on this profile line, that will remove those. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the same thing for this little run right here. Right. So let me open up that profile view. You can see stuff is very short. So I'm going to go back into my place name boundary tool and I'll do this very much the same thing, right? Start and stop. Maybe you want to keep all of your profiles the same, like vertical amount, so the profile height. Maybe you keep them the same problem, or maybe you don't. It's however you need to do it to fit it on the sheet and have it look good still, right? So I will go ahead and annotate or cut this sheet. So in this video, you'll notice I went and I changed something, but I didn't forget the annotation group this time. Yep. I do want to make sure I go to a new sheet, but you notice that I didn't notice that put my detail scale back to 1:1. So I did change it and then it got changed back and I missed it. So again, not a big deal. If it happens to you, it happens to the best of us, right? So I can just go in and I can fix that reference to have what it's supposed to be placed at. So I can just bump that up to 1:20. So rather than remake that video, I thought it was good to show you guys that sometimes you're gonna miss a setting. And after you fix that up, maybe you move this around. And now for the main part, I think is placing these tables, which is pretty easy to do. I have a report set up. That's how you're going to place these tables. So there's two reports, one's for the conduits, one's for the structures, right? So if I click on the structures one, I can come and just do a selection of my area and it'll pick up all the nodes. I want to show, I'm doing this on purpose to show you guys something. So I just did a selection set. When I go to place that report, make sure that you have a seed selected or it's going to look like that really bad, right? So choose that OHDOT reports one, fixes the formatting a little bit for you guys. But what I want you to notice is that it doubled up all my nodes. This is a known defect with Bentley. So the way I selected, it's picking up those nodes twice. So it is then placing them twice, which you don't want. But if I just go and select each one individually and I place table, it's not doubling them. So this is a defect. Follow Bentley. I think they plan on fixing it, addressing it. They are aware of it. It's just the nuance with nodes. I think it's the way nodes are placed. But just watch out for that. Your table isn't doubled up. Now you can see I didn't have a baseline reference assigned. I mentioned that earlier. Just so happened to be there, not for any particular reason. Maybe point that out that you might miss it. You might need to go back and fix it. Was not planned at all. Obviously. So there's the indicator. You might want to go back and make sure you have everything filled out that you need filled out. All right. So now I'm going to move on. Oh, I'm going to show that it's not fixed. It's not there. That's why I didn't show up. So now the conduits, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select that report. And I'll do a selection set forward here. So I just selected over everything. And for conduits, you can do that selection, just the bulk slide over and grab everything. It will not double it up. It's only the nodes that doubles it up for you. All right. So you can just very easily drag over everything to select it all and place it. So as long as you ran the DU sync tool, this table should be pretty easy to place. You're just going to select the ones you want to be included and place them. Now, I do want to mention this refresh data button. I've submitted this to Bentley. You can't use it. So if I click on this table and I hit refresh data, it got rid of one of the rows. So you do the same thing for nodes, you're going to see the same thing happen. I believe it's because the way we placed it is based off of selection. And I think when you hit refresh, it doesn't know the selection that was used. That's my hunch, my guess. But nonetheless, I feel like if I place a table and I want to refresh the values in that table, I should be able to do that. And I should be able to hit that refresh button. So that has been submitted to Bentley, but for now you can't really rely on that. But it really is not that hard to just delete and replace the table. That's going to be my recommendation. Don't use that refresh button until they address that problem. Just go ahead and replace it if there's been a change. I guess if you know the one value, if there's one particular thing that changed, I guess you could just go edit the text and just fix the text for that one line. If it's not a lot, you could do that, I guess. It is pretty easy to replace that. So hopefully that isn't too bad for you guys. And I do want to go over this playlist I mentioned several times. Let me jump over to that playlist real quick. So we've had this playlist for like 4 years or so. So the videos were getting a little dated, especially as new tools came and new workflows came out. So I did go through and refresh a lot of these videos, got rid of the old ones. I kept the ones I didn't have to redo, like extracting utilities, editing profiles. Those I didn't feel a need to replace, but I did make a new drainage placement ones because there are new placement tools there that have come out since then. So I posted that like 3 weeks ago. Drainage profile runs, setup for profile sheets, drainage detail sheet creation, right? So that's kind of what I went over, but this one's a little bit more detailed. Going over the sync app, it's that video that I showed earlier. User action needed, how to update from 12 to 24. The drainage annotation I went over today, that video is right there. This one's an old one, importing UDX. We won't really go over that right now. Placing head walls is the old one. Utilities I did remake. So I didn't really say anything because this one's really more about drainage, but the whole DU sync app is for drainage and utilities. So that sync app is going to be used for utility as well. It's the same workflow for updating utility files to 24. So I don't have a dedicated update video for utilities because it's the same as drainage, just different feature definition. But I did remake this video on utilities just to go over some of those things, go over the annotation and the item types and using the sync app so that if someone is using utilities, they have some video point of reference as well. Content size has been around. Uh, this one's a really old one. This one I did want to mention. We've gotten several tickets on this. The 3D cut display not showing conduit. So you do a 3D cut and it throws in a dot for that conduit instead of the actual like slice of that conduit. And this video is going to go over how to fix it, what the problem is. It has been filed with Bentley. The fixes are actually pretty easy. We are going to fix it in our dgen lib. I just haven't pushed it out yet. The fix in the dgen lib will go out with all this stuff, the new app and everything. So it should go out soon. But that won't fix existing problems. That'll just stop it from happening in the future. So I'm sure as I'm saying this, a lot of people are nodding their head like, yes, I ran into that. This video is going to be your friend. It will go over exactly what you need to do, exactly what the problem is. So I had a couple more things and then I'm going to switch back over to the chat here. I wanted to make sure I left some time. 3 minutes over here. So this is just a tip that I feel like I've never actually told anyone about. I guess I wasn't aware for a long time. I was just talking with drainage people at Bentley, kind of brought it up, and I was like, I probably need to at least bring this up to people on some things that can cause problems specific to drainage files. So copying a file versus save as, freeing a file in ProjectWise, not hitting the save button on the dgen file, having files with the same names. All these situations can cause problems. And you're like, well, why? Why would that cause a problem? That should seem like normal operations. And you would think it should be normal operations, yes. But behind the scenes, drainage is storing some files in this location. Users, username, app data, local, temp, Bentley, sudo. They all temp files. But if you go to this location, you will see there are a bunch of files, and the files are kind of particular to the name of the dgen file. So sometimes this can cause problems, especially like it not updating when you like save a file. If you don't actually hit that save button, sometimes it doesn't actually trigger to update these temp files. Having files with the same name, I still don't know how that works. I'm dumbfounded by this because you could very easily have files with the same name in two different locations, but the temp file goes to the same location. So they could start fighting with each other, I can imagine. I don't know the details, but I wanted to bring it up as a possible reason why you might run into drainage problems, some of the reasons that could cause them. And this is why. I I don't know the details of what the temp files are doing, what can cause the corruptions or problems, but I do know that this has been the source of some problems that people have ran into. So, thought I'd point it out since I had the attention of everyone. You can bring that up with Bentley, not me. I have no control over this. So with that, let me check the chat here. I tried to leave some time for questions here. Let's see here. Where did we leave off? If you looks like Matt answered. We show our proposed store streams sheets. Do we have to project it to the settings profiles? Looks like Matt already answered that question. Is the 2024 workspace available? If not, when will it be available? So that question, I feel like we've gotten quite a bit. So just like our previous updates, like when we went to 10.12, we just keep using our current workspace and we just update the files in there as needed, right? So our current workspace is what we're going to be using for 2024, right? Now, at the April 2nd date is when internally we are pushing 2024 to all of our users, right? But we've always said you don't have to move with us. If you're not in our project wise, you can move ahead of us, you can move behind us. It's always been left open. We have tried not to dictate what version of ORD you use. But if you are working in our data source, we only have one workspace and we just update that workspace. So for that reason, those of you working directly in our data source will have to move to 2024 because our workspace, we don't have another one that's going to stay compatible with 10.12, right? So that's the reasoning why. That's also hopefully explaining we're not updating our workspace. So April 2nd comes, our current workspace will still be compatible with 10.12. Right? We're not going to update any of the schemas right away in any of the dgen libs. And we're doing that on purpose. While April 2nd is our move over date, we want to try to delay updating our workspace, any of the schemas in our workspace to 2024. That way, if someone didn't get updated exactly on the second, there's a little bit of overlap that we don't just instantly cause compatibility problems working in our data source. If you're not in our data source, again, you control it all. You control when you update your workspace, or someone in your organization controls it. So that's not going to be a problem. You guys move when you guys are ready to move. If you want to move forward on new projects only, that's something you get to control at your organization. So hopefully I clarified that. So we are going to try to delay updating our workspace to have any 2024 compatibility specific for as long as we can. If that's a couple weeks, a couple months, I don't know. Now we will still release an update. I said I have to get this dgen lib out for the item types, this updated app. We're gonna push that out, but those won't change any schemas of any files, so they won't cause a compatibility issue with 2024. But eventually, we will update a file, and if you are still trying to use that workspace and you update it with an older version already, you will see compatibility problems. Right? We have that sync tool to help control that. So you can choose the civil version that you want to sync a workspace to. We have zip files for each specific older version, right? The only caveat there is once we move to a new version, that zip file is set in stone. We're not updating that zip file. So if we release something that has nothing to do with schema and you want that in an older version, that zip file will not get updated. But the benefit of the sync tool is the sync tool knows what it can bring down and maintain compatibility for those older versions. So that hopefully clarified a lot. I didn't want to spend too much time on that since this is a drainage specific call. But what else we got? Oh boy. At what stage of plan development do we need to change to a new drainage labeling schema? If we submit stage 3, do we need to revise? That's not, if you're already pretty far along, we don't really think you need to go and switch it. If you're at the start, you're not that far along, then that's when you would move to it, using that like labeling the table. Right? This is how we end up editing the drainage labels by hand on projects because of type and flow error take up a lot of space in the sheet to get rid of the type. So it's something we have to do. Okay, so I guess the example of set it down. So I see that example. So again, if you were here when I was going over the defaults, right? If you don't want it to say type B, you just want to say B, you can just go to that feature definition and get rid of the type. And then your annotation, you can just run the sync tool and boom, all of your annotation updated. And there's only a handful of feature definitions. So you just have to quickly go through those in that specific file and you can easily get to that kind of display pretty quickly. So I think that's a huge part of the benefit of that sync tool helping manage this kind of stuff. So don't be afraid to go in if you want something like that. If you don't understand how those defaults are set, I can try to explain it, but hopefully it's pretty straightforward. Go to the feature and change that value. Naming existing nodes and conduits to be removed with DEP balloons. Change your processes they are regularly powerful and to get paid sort of removals. Has this process been thought through? I also wonder about having to assign those names in what is generally a survey file and who has control over those. So a lot of things going on there. One thing is the drainage features should not be in a survey file. There's existing survey will be there that might indicate that there's a node there or a pipe there, but the survey file is a 3D file. You should not be trying to place the actual drainage feature in that file. There's no 2D model in that file. You're going to run into problems if you're doing that. As for the removal part, you make a valid point. I'll have to get back to you on that. I guess the removal will tend to be more existing items with the R. Yeah, I will have to adjust that. I'm not prepared to address that comment, but you bring up a good point. And yeah, I think a lot of what we changed was really geared towards the proposed side of things, as I kind of referred to in the table. It's really for the proposed stuff, and the existing stuff we're trying to keep the same. But that you do bring up a good point. So I will have to get back to you on that. And if structures are shown on profile view, where do the structure tables go? Do we have to make another profile run sheet with plain view to select them and make a table? All right, so if you can't fit all on one sheet, then you don't have to select the plan, but you can also select I just did that in that example. If you select the profile nodes, the table, you'll get the table the same way. I mean, if you wanted to, you could reference in the plan view if you rather select those ones. You could reference that off to the side just to create your selection set. But yeah, it'll work just as long as you have that feature selected somewhere. Hopefully that answered that. Were contractors consulted when the table approach was considered? Seems like a hassle to flip back and forth between sheets to find structured information. So just to be, I guess, clear here is that a lot of this change came from Office of Hydraulics and the Hans from the construction side of drainage. So that was more on their court to handle. I did ask them if they reach out. I believe they did. I believe we did get feedback from the contractors. but I guess I can't speak directly to that. We manage the CAD side, we manage L&D, the specific things in L&D Volume 3 that might be specific to a different office. They really have the control over what standards they need, right? So if they're saying, I need the SFN shown on the plan sheet, they're coming to us, we're making that, so we manage it, but we really leave it up to that office to dictate what's needed and what's not needed. But I can tell you that contractors were reached out to. So looks like Matt answered. Practice when I use working ORD in general is when things are not working properly or ORD crashes. Is the closeout files free file, then purge local copy and try reopening? Are we saying this can cause issues for drainage files? Kind of, I guess. I honestly, you're gonna have to go to Bentley on this one. Those temp files, that's kind of where I got it from. What could cause problems is those temp files and in doing things like freeing the file. I really don't know the details of that. I just wanted to pass along the information that was passed to me of what could have been causes for things that might be specific to crashes in already drainage or corruption. I can't speak to the details. I would just have to say reach out to Bentley and ask them what's going on. What does Bentley suggest, or what are other DOTs doing for under annotation? Why does ODOT need to create all of this? So we have taken a look at other states. One thing that's almost where the table approach came from is another state as a way to annotate. I do think that what we saw was that we definitely annotated a lot more than other states have or do when it comes to this drainage annotation. Right. Other reasons for this table, a lot of it stemmed from that CFN number and not getting that for the type Bs that are under pavement. And that's been in the L&D Volume 2 for a long time. So this table has helped making it more relevant that you need those on those. It's not just like the culverts. It's type Bs, I think over 12-inch in size. That's under pavement. Need that CFN number. That was another reason for the table based approach. If you go back in time, the original thought was the roll plot sheet, where we can get all the drainage data in one spot. But we won't go into details. But the roll plot's kind of not worked out. But the other reason was all the troubles we were having annotation with drainage over the years. Now I will say the annotation, we are in a lot better spot than we were a couple of years ago. I think Bentley still has some bugs to fix. I think we can still make the process a little easier. But I do think we have set up a lot to make the process easier. But I do understand that the drainage has been a pain point for a while. I hound Bentley all the time on the defects, and a lot of defects have been fixed probably because of me hounding on them, saying I need this, I need that. So it's not that it's I don't not hear your frustrations. I'm doing everything I can to make the process easier. The chat's been slowing down a little bit. I think we are half a minute away from the time, so I don't want to keep it more. It's already been 2 hours. I will post this recording. Again, all the individual videos are also posted individually in that playlist. Feel free to reach out if you have any problems or additional questions about things. I will push out that sync tool here probably in the next couple of weeks so that you guys can start playing around with it. And if you have any problems, let me know. Hopefully this is informative for everyone. I think it was a little overdue. I know a lot of the videos were getting a little dated. So it forced me to take the time to go ahead and update a lot of things. We're almost there, guys. I feel like I say that every time I talk about drainage. We've gotten a lot of things fixed. It's just then it would stop fumbling on, one or two things that we release, we'd be in a really good spot. So with that, I'll let you guys go. Thanks for attending and look for the recording to be posted here shortly.